Former Ravens linebacker Malik Harrison is now with the Steelers, and during his introductory press conference with Pittsburgh, he talked a little spicy about Lamar Jackson. We talk about that, his comments about Patrick Queen and the Ravens and Steelers rivalry, all that and more coming up next on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. Free and available, as always, all podcasting platforms, including in video form on YouTube, where you can like and subscribe to the channel, and in audio form where you can follow along and subscribe as well. 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage here for you. We go live after every Ravens game, after every single piece of Ravens big news as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Pretty uneventful weekend for the Ravens. We're back here for another week of Ravens content. I guess Lamar Jackson's an actor now, so that is something that we can take away from the weekend, but no moves for Baltimore. The NFL offseason certainly slowing down, but the Ravens offseason continuing to take real shape, as we'll talk about in the second part of the show. Then in the final part of the show, we'll get into our weekly mock draft Monday. But in the first part of the show, I want to talk about Malik Harrison. You might be saying, well, what are you talking about? This guy's a former Raven. We don't need to be talking about him anymore. Malik Harrison had his introductory press conference with Pittsburgh about a week or so ago. And I caught these headlines or these quotes yesterday, so I'm just now getting one. I wasn't even aware Malik Harrison had an introductory press conference. But he had some things to say about Lamar Jackson, some spicy comments there, talked about his time with Baltimore. It's very complimentary about the Ravens and that whole situation, but also the Ravens-Steelers rivalry he has mentioned in comments on as well, and he also defended Patrick Queen. So we're going to get into all of that here right now. Now, I want to make something clear. Talking spicy versus taking shots to me are two different things. Where talking spicy, yes, there could be quotes to get used throughout the season, and I think some of his will, especially about Lamar Jackson, but he was not trying to be malicious. Like, for example, Patrick Queen's press conference last offseason, that was like he was talking spicy and he was taking some shots in there. This was not the case with Malik Harrison. Now, Malik talked about Lamar Jackson. He was asked about Lamar, and actually, if you caught our episode last week, there was an episode we did on Kyle Van Noy's comments with Colin Cowherd about Lamar Jackson. Harrison's comments kind of lined up with Kyle Van Noy's in terms of Lamar being a great teammate and knowing everybody, having relationships with everybody. He said, quote, he surprised me every day. He does things you don't think that a person can do. Great guy, been my guy since day one. He knew my name when I first came in. I'm like, how do you know me? Meaning like, okay, even these guys, Malik Harrison was a third-round draft pick a couple years after Lamar came into the league. This was after Lamar's MVP season. And again, Lamar, whether it was he took the time to know all the names of the guys in the draft class or did some research beforehand or whatever it was, he knew who Malik was when he got there, according to Malik here. So that was a really nice thing. But the comment that I think got some people going was he was asked about, stopping the Ravens' rushing attack and figuring out, okay, how do you stop those guys? And Malik said, quote, going against them in practice every day, you can't do too much because you don't want to mess with church money. But now me being on the other side, I can really just unleash and just dominate how I know I can do. So this quote, look, I'm sure people are going to run with it. They're going to get a lot of run with it during the season. Again, I don't think he was saying this in a malicious way, but it is, I guess, a spicy thing to say when we are in the era of bulletin board material, right? Because I think that, even if the Ravens themselves or Lamar, Derrick Henry even don't use it as that, I think the fan base might take this quote. Because look, Ravens Steelers stuff, that's always been a big deal. And Malik talked about that as well. But he's right. Where like in practice, you're not trying to mess up anybody. You're not trying to unleash your full powers because you don't want to hurt anybody. Now, during the regular season, Malik was decently up and down. He struggled at times and had really good moments at other times. Malik, I think, will have some level of a decently big role for Baltimore, for Pittsburgh, I guess. I'm still used to saying he's in Baltimore, but for Pittsburgh this season. So I think that he will have opportunities, much like Patrick Queen did. He's not going to have as big of a role as Patrick Queen does in Pittsburgh, but maybe he'll play edge. Maybe he'll be able to go and try to sack Lamar Jackson. But again, these comments from Malik, very complimentary. But I think when you say, okay, now BB on the other side, I can really unleash and dominate how I know that I can. That's where I think I've already seen people run with that quote a little bit. And that's actually how I first came to know that Malik Harrison actually had a press conference, was because I saw some Ravens fans talking about that one specific quote because, people are saying, oh, yeah, he's saying he's going to stop Lamar. He's saying he's going to stop Derrick Henry, this, that, and the other. I don't think he's saying that, but I think that he is saying, yeah, now that he doesn't have to have those practice rules with the Ravens and whatnot, now he can go out there and, I guess in his eyes, show and dominate the way that he feels that he can against the Ravens and, I guess, Lamar and Derrick Henry. He had a moment against Derrick Henry in Baltimore against Tennessee, where he laid a hit stick on Derrick Henry, and it made it look pretty effortless at that. So, I don't know. I mean, I'm still taking Lamar and Derrick Henry over Malik Harrison personally. I mean, I think that's just what naturally almost anybody would do. But, hey, you know what? You got to respect the confidence from Malik, and I respect that he went out of his way to kind of tell that story about Lamar. And, again, just prove to everybody, much like Kyle Van Noy did. If you haven't checked that episode, be sure to go check it out. But to prove to everybody, again, that Lamar Jackson is this great teammate and this great person. Now, he had a lot of good things to say about his time in Baltimore as well. He said, there's no disrespect to Baltimore. I love Baltimore. The 5 years I was there, I had a great time, but I'm turning a new chapter and I'm with the Steelers. So, all right, that's great. And again, Patrick Queen had, I guess, a similar thing to say, just, a lot spicier of comments from Patrick Queen during his press conference last year. But I think it's interesting because Kyle Van Noy also, during his appearance with Colin Cowherd, talked about the Ravens and Steelers rivalry and how he thinks there's juice being added back into it. Malik Harrison was asked about being on the other side of that rivalry, and he said, quote, I think that the competitiveness is special. He was asked about what was special. So he said, I think the competitiveness being on the other side during that week is just different. And I feel like over here is going to be even more different. And then he compared it to the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry. Obviously, he was a part of that over at Ohio State. He, talked about Ryan Shazier a bunch during his introductory press conference. Those two both playing linebacker at Ohio State. Shazier, was an incredible player for Pittsburgh before his horrific and tragic injury that cut his career short. But I still think that for a guy like Malik Harrison and even like Kyle Van Noy, we're not in the age of Ben Roethlisberger, Joe Flacco, Troy Polamalu, Ray Lewis, Ed Reed, James Harris, like that whole Hines Ward, that rivalry, that era of it, that chapter is closed. And I think for a handful of years now, people have been looking for that spark to reignite the rivalry. And while, again, I don't think we're going to get up to that level of, all those legends that I just mentioned right now, I feel like it is in a better spot than it was, say, 5 years ago when, the exciting wins were, Duck Hodges, where, Marlon Humphrey forced fumble or cut, like all that, the rivalry has gone through ups and downs since all those guys left and all those guys retired. But I do think that people on both sides, whether it's players, coaches, executives, whatnot, they know that it's Steelers week. They know that it's Ravens week. And I think that the respect in the rivalry has honestly gone up from both teams. I know that, there have been dirty moments and this, that, and the other from back in the day. But I still think that for Harrison, I don't know. It feels like the Steelers, they do bring in former Ravens. And look, the Ravens have done it too. There are a couple over the last handful of seasons. Harrison was asked about, do you think Pittsburgh brought you in to try to help stop Baltimore 2 or 3 times a year? And he said that he thinks that's probably one of the main reasons why the Pittsburgh Steelers had interest in him, was to, try to help the Steelers get back on top in that rivalry. I don't think Malik Harrison makes or breaks that. I don't think he's going to be going out there and giving away any secrets that are going to tremendously impact. I mean, Patrick Queen could have done that last year, and, look what happened there. Not great for Patrick Queen overall against Baltimore in the 3 matchups. So, again, Malik Harrison, some spicy things. Again, exuding confidence. I'd call them more confident remarks than I would taking shots. Again, taking shots, I feel like, has malice behind them. I don't think Malik Harrison was being malicious, but as I said, I've already seen some Baltimore people, Baltimore fans kind of take that second comment about the Ravens run game, Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, and run with it a little bit. So I feel like that's a quote that's going to pop up during the games between Baltimore and Pittsburgh this season. And it kind of brings another conversation too about Baltimore and, the linebacker spot there. Harrison was a big part of their special teams unit. Harrison talked about that a lot during the press conference as well. But again, does Malik Harrison impact a whole bunch against Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry? It's no disrespect, but honestly, no. Honestly, Patrick Queen is going to be more the X factor there if we're talking about that. These are physical games. Malik Harrison is a physical player. I think Baltimore, when Harrison was on the field, they like to use him in a bunch of different spots. Obviously, we've talked about the versatility from him, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, but it's not a thing that worries me. And again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. Truly, I just think that Harrison's role is not going to be that big on Pittsburgh, because not only do they have Patrick Queen, but I think Peyton Wilson's supposed to take a step this year. They brought Cole Holcomb back, so I think that'll be another option there. And, I feel like if anything, Harrison's time might come on the outside as opposed to on the inside. So it's interesting. I honestly expected Baltimore to bring back Harrison. I mean, not at the price point that he ended up getting from Pittsburgh. I think that was a little bit of an overpay, and, I think that credits Baltimore. And we'll kind of get into how the Ravens offseason is taking shape with this move and others in the second part of the show in just a second here. But I do think that with what Baltimore has right now, they were able to sign Jake Hummel to play, I think, probably a better role, just because I think Harrison, he did struggle at times. And while he did provide some level of good moments, I don't think it was enough to give him $5 million per season, which Pittsburgh did. So Harrison is a guy that, again, very complimentary of his time with Baltimore, very complimentary of Lamar Jackson, but people will take his comments and run with them, and we'll just see how that all goes. So coming up in the second part of the show, we'll talk about how Baltimore's offseason is beginning to take real shape, even though the offseason is dying down in terms of the busyness of it. So be sure to stay tuned. Lots to get to on Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. And the show is brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting it down the nets. My bracket is not gone very well this year. I'll keep it real. It's been really bad, but I still got my eye on a few underdogs, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on, and the FanDuel app is simple to use. When I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. We're back here, our second segment of Locked On Ravens. Kevin Oestreicher still here with you on this Monday. Another week of Ravens content coming your way here. I know the offseason's definitely dying down compared to what it was. And honestly, the early part of the offseason this year, one of the craziest I can remember, especially over that first couple of days, honestly, where guys seemed to be getting signed every 5 minutes. There was a big trade happening every hour. It was insanity. Now, I know the Ravens weren't really involved in a lot of that. They lost some guys and, ended up bringing in a couple as well. DeAndre Hopkins, Jake Hummel are their two outside additions so far. Well, Cooper Rush makes it 3 with the backup quarterback position. But I still think that the Ravens offseason has begun to take real shape, and that can honestly trickle down to potential trades, when the Ravens make moves, what their draft could look like, because now today will mark 2 weeks since the legal tampering period began, since, teams had permission to talk to players to get, a inkling of whether they wanted to sign, just agree to deals and whatnot. with the actual league year starting off just a little under 2 weeks ago at this point. But for me, I think that the Ravens, as I've said on this show before, this is going to be a long process. It is every single season for Baltimore. It's always going to be that multi-week, multi-month offseason where they make a move or two, or in this case, 3 over the course of the first couple weeks. Then they let markets develop. And this year in particular, there are still a lot of players that have potential to be traded, even could be cut still. I know that Jair Alexander, I think, has this fan base split down the middle, at least from what I can tell. There are a lot of people who want Jair Alexander. There are a lot of people who do not want anything to do with Jair Alexander on the Baltimore Ravens. I personally am a fan of it. I know that for some people, the holdup is trade. And yes, Jair makes too much money for Baltimore to trade for, in my opinion. I think that if anything, the Packers would probably have to release him in order to have it be a realistic possibility. But as Sam and Njoku and I talked about on our Friday show, and if you haven't checked that out, we talked about Zach Orr potentially hinting at some more Ravens moves, what those could be. The fact that the Ravens did lose Brandon Stevens, I think, is addition by subtraction. I've been vocal about that on this show. I didn't think Baltimore should have brought him back. But as Sam and I talked about, he played a lot of snaps for the Ravens last season. And while obviously we have a long way to go to week 1, the Ravens are going to have to find someone that can replace those snaps. So obviously I think Nate Wiggins is going to get a huge boost, and he's going to play, and Zach Orr talked about this too, 100% of snaps probably type player. Like they want him to be that guy. But even so, we know Baltimore, one, you can never have enough corners. Ozzie Newsome was a big proponent of that when he was GM, and obviously he's still in his role with the team today. But you can't just, I wouldn't just bring in anybody. Like if anything, I would try, even if it's not Jair Alexander, try to get someone with experience in there. The issue is that there aren't a lot of guys left in free agency. I think your top options are guys like Rasul Douglas. If you want to bring back Trey White, he's still out there. It just feels like it's getting slim out there. It is getting slim. So when you talk about needs, we had a big laundry list of needs coming into the offseason for Baltimore. We talked about that all the time. Every episode, we were, okay, what do the Ravens need? Offense, defense, who can play special teams, this, that, and the other. Well, for me, a couple needs have been checked off the box here. And this, again, trickles down to the draft. Wide receiver, they've gotten their veteran guy. You're probably not going to sign or trade for another vet wide receiver. DeAndre Hopkins is that. Boom, you check that off. Offensive line depth. Ben Cleveland seems to be that guy for them. They've passed on other guards who have been out there in free agency. Not that there aren't any available left. Maybe they make one more outside addition, but I don't think that's high priority for them anymore. What haven't they done? I mean, look, you can even talk about backup quarterback. Okay, they got their backup quarterback. Boom, that's checked off. Don't even need to take one in the draft. You talk about linebacker. Yeah, you lost 2. You signed 1. So either you take one in the draft or you sign another vet. But high priority, edge to me is high priority. Corner is high priority. Safety is high priority. Even defensive line, I think, is high priority with the retirement of Michael Pierce. I think bringing in a vet there, and I know a lot of people talk Calais Campbell. I've talked Calais Campbell. Again, some people really want Calais Campbell. Other people really don't. Like in terms of the fan base, split down the middle on Calais Campbell as well. So we've talked about former Ravens. Obviously, guys like Matt Judon, Darius Smith at the S position, Campbell himself. I know Chuck Clark's a free agent too. Although I wouldn't do anything with Chuck Clark. If anything, I think Justin Simmons is intriguing at the safety spot. Sam and I talked about that as well. But I think you focus on defense now if you're Baltimore. Your quarterback position is set. Your running back position is set. Your fullback position is set. Wide receiver position is set outside of probably one later round draft pick. Tight end position is set. Offensive tackle spot. You could maybe stand to sign a veteran tackle, but honestly, with Stanley back, it's going to be a very low priority signing, and you just take someone in the draft. Guard again. I think that it'd be ideal if they got someone in free agency, but I feel like they're just going to go draft. Center, you're set. Defense has to be your next priority here. Obviously, re-signing and getting Darius Washington, that whole situation figured out, I think, is big, but you need to get at least one vet edge rusher in. My bold prediction here, and I'm doing this now. This is March 24th. I'm doing this right now. Unless something changes, I don't think David Ojabo is on this team this year. I don't. I don't see a spot for him, if we're being honest, because I think Baltimore, I mean, if they play it the way that I think they'll play it, I'll revise it to say if they don't bring in anybody else, or if it's a 4th round edge rusher and that's it and they trust their guys again, David Ojabo will be on the team. But if they sign a vet, David Ojabo will not be on this team, in my opinion. You have Kyle Van Noy, Odafe Owe, David Ojabo, Tavius Robinson, Adisa Isaac. Those are 5 right now. Then if you sign a vet, let's just say it's Judon. Let's say they sign Matt Judon. That's 6. And I think they're going to take someone in the draft too, whether it is day 1, day 2, or day 3. That's 7. That's too many. Even 6 is too many. I think 5 is that sweet spot number. But let's just say you sign a guy and draft a guy, that's 7. I mean, I don't think you move on from Adisa Isaac. I don't think you move on from Tavius Robinson. You're certainly not moving on from Kyle Van Noy or Odafe. I mean, maybe Owe gets traded on draft night. If an extension can't get reached, that's another possibility too. But if none of that happens, to me, David Ojabo is the odd man out. And I think that, again, the known production of a Judon and the known production of a Smith are one of those guys versus the unknown of Ojabo. I think you just, the way that the Ravens are right now, the fact that this could be the last year of this version of the Ravens team, a la guys like Mark Andrews, even John Harbaugh and other guys, it's not about going all in and getting, trading your whole future away and whatnot. Don't go do what the Rams did. I mean, it worked out for them, but you don't need to do that right now. And the Ravens won't. They value draft picks too much. But I think that you take valued and experienced production over some of these projects that are on your roster. And that's just the harsh reality of the league. But I think that's the path that they should go. Be more aggressive. Trade up in the draft. Make a move for somebody. I think the Ravens still have one move, medium to big, left in them and a bunch of smaller ones on the horizon. But for now, I think Baltimore, there is a way that this offseason goes probably 5 or 6 different directions. But for now, I think we are seeing it begin to take shape because of the fact that, yes, you've checked off a couple of your boxes. Whether they check off more boxes this week, next month, or whatever it may be, they will do it. But for now, you can see how things are beginning to fall into place. And with 11 draft picks, which in my opinion still is too many, you will have a lot of swings to go and address the rest of your needs there. But speaking of the draft, we have a mock draft Monday coming your way. I'll go through a full 7-round Ravens mock draft, then get to some listener and watcher mock drafts after. So be sure to stay tuned. Plenty coming your way on Locked On Ravens. Back here on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, talking Ravens football. Baltimore in the news, actually, not the Ravens, but just the city of Baltimore. If you are a March Madness fan and you watch Maryland go on and beat Colorado State on a buzzer beater, Derrick Queen, Baltimore proud native, was asked where his confidence comes from and says, "I'm from Baltimore. That's why." And, people are saying, put it on a shirt, unreal quote, everything. So it was an unreal game. Maryland advances to the Sweet 16, and Derrick Queen with a little shout out to Baltimore there, which is really cool. And hopefully the Terps can keep it going. But we're here to talk about Ravens football. It's Monday, so you know what time it is. It's Mock Draft Monday. Before we get into that, though, really appreciate everybody for being here. Whether you're an everyday or a first-time listener or just somewhere in the middle, thank you for tuning in and for your support. Again, 5 days a week plus more daily Ravens coverage here, even in the offseason. So we're going to continue rolling here on Locked On Ravens. Tell a friend, tell a family member if they want daily Ravens coverage. We're here for them and here for you on Locked On Ravens. But let the mock draft festivities begin. We do this every single week. New mock drafts, new 7-rounder. And I went a little bit different this time. But again, still sticking with the needs that we talked about in the second part of the show. So I ended up taking Savon Revel, the East Carolina corner, at 27. Now, a lot of people think that he would have been a top 10 or top 15 player had he not torn his ACL. It was a rough go of things for him there. It's unfortunate, right? I mean, I think that when you tear your ACL, September is when he did it, so beginning of the year, I think that for me, you're like, okay, well, when is he going to come back from that injury? Obviously, it happened early enough in the season for him, and there was actually an update that said that he will probably be ready. He's expected to be full go by the time week 1 rolls around. So Revel's doctor, Daniel E. Cooper, sent a letter to teams that he expects him to be good to go for the 2025 season. And he said that when he reports to an NFL team after the draft, he'll be cleared for all strength and conditioning activities, individual running, cutting drills as a defensive back. Now, he won't be cleared for participation with the team until training camp, but that's just routine protocol after an ACL injury. So again, this is a guy that you could potentially be getting as a top 10, top 15 talent in the late 20s. And I would see him falling that far potentially. And now there maybe is a team like the 20s that could go up and get him, but he is a star in the making. Now, again, I know that the injury will shy some teams away from him. Be like, oh, we don't really want to deal with that. We don't want the risk, this, that, and the other. I think it's a risk worth taking if you're Baltimore. He can step in. We talked about, okay, who's going to be that third corner? I think he can step in, and it's possible because, look, I don't know how much longer Marlon Humphrey has left with the Ravens. It's an uncomfortable reality, I guess, of how much more time does Marlon have. If you can have Wiggins and Revel together for the foreseeable future, and Revel recovers from the injury, he's all good to go, he plays like he was playing, I think it's a home run duo for Baltimore as you kind of, I guess, usher out the Humphrey era whenever that is, and you bring in a younger cornerback room that still has star power in it. Now, I ended up taking an offensive lineman in round 2, Jonah Savaiinaea, who has a lot of versatility. Again, I think that people view him more as a guard at the NFL level, which is fine. I think he does have more developmental traits where he doesn't have to start right away, but I think he could if needed. Like, he could definitely start for the Ravens at guard if they wanted him to. I could certainly see him being a player that the Ravens plug and play. If the Ravens are confident enough in Falele and Voorhees, I wouldn't be, but I'm just saying if the Ravens take that route, then you can sit him for a year or however many games. I mean, again, Roger Rosengarten wasn't the starter week 1, but hey, guess what? He ends up playing really well when he got the opportunity, and oh, look, here we are with that situation. So I don't know. It feels like to me, Baltimore, there are a lot of good opportunities for the Ravens to draft offensive linemen this year, whether it is day 1, day 2, or day 3. And I think day 2 is kind of that perfect sweet spot with Ronnie Stanley being re-signed, especially if the guy can play guard. You don't have to draft a tackle here, where I know that Savaiinaea did play tackle, but I do think that kicking him into guard is probably the best bet for a lot of these teams, including the Ravens. Round 3, I went Omar Norman Lott, the Tennessee defensive lineman. He's been getting a lot of buzz. Round 4, David Walker, edge from Arkansas State. So back-to-back picks on the D-line. Malachi Moore, Alabama safety, was my second round 4 pick at 136. Then I had to go back to him. J.J. Pegues, Ole Miss defensive lineman. J.J. Pegues would essentially be the Patrick Ricard replacement once Patrick Ricard is no longer on the Ravens. He has that offense-defense versatility. He's a really fun player, and I think he's really good at what he does. And I think having that versatility is something the Ravens do want. Again, I feel like he would be like Ricard, where he's not starting off only playing defense this time around, but he plays both. I feel like the Ravens over time would generally just convert him over to fullback full time. But he still has the talent of a defensive lineman, which I think does help if the Ravens needed a spot start there, or spot snaps, or whatever it would be, like Ricard did early in his career. So I think Pegues is a really fun player. I think the fit is honestly pretty seamless in Baltimore, especially if they want to have a versatile player like that on their roster to, I guess, be waiting in the wings. Then I had Jack Kaiser, Notre Dame linebacker, at 183. Zav Frazier, UTSA corner at 203. Luke Lachey, Iowa tight end at 210. Caden Prather, speaking of Maryland wide receiver at number 212. And then Caleb Rogers at Texas Tech, offensive lineman at 243. I like the way this went for me. I feel like, again, getting your corner in round 1. This corner class isn't very deep. It's not one of the greatest cornerback classes I've ever seen. It leaves a lot to be desired, if we're being honest, but I still think getting one of the top premier talents in this draft, despite the injury, is really important for Baltimore as they continue to stack up talent. And I don't think the injury, especially if he's going to be ready for 2025, week 1, I don't think that should shy away, or they should shy away from that when it comes to adding a player that is really, really talented. Then obviously you build the trenches, offensive line, defensive line, take a chance on small school guy who I think can make an impact. But then you kind of move down the board. And again, it's just picking needs. And when you get to picks like 9, 10, 11, this point, like, oh, what are we doing? Who are we adding? You're in this mock draft simulator. You're like, okay, what picks does this team actually still need? So there are a lot of ways to kind of go about it, but I thought that I ended up with a pretty good mock draft there. So I liked it. I wouldn't say it was my favorite idea, but I thought I did get a lot of good value overall. Let's get to a couple of listener/watcher mock drafts. Again, I put these out every day or every Sunday on Twitter. I then put a tweet on the Locked On Ravens account. You can put your mock drafts below for a chance to have them be read out on the show. Let's start off with one from Be More Finest, who has the Ravens taking Jihad Campbell, linebacker from Alabama at 27, Deion Walker, defensive lineman from Kentucky at 59, Josiah Stewart, edge from Michigan at 91, Jackson Slater, Sacramento State at 129, guard Jack Nelson, offensive tackle from Wisconsin at 136, Elijah Roberts, SMU defensive tackle at 176, Noel Williams, Hunter Wohler, both secondary members. Williams, corner from California at 183. Wohler, safety from Wisconsin at 203. Rayan Lane, the third safety from Navy at 210. Devin Neal, running back from Kansas at 212. And CJ Dupree, Alabama, tight end at 243. We talked about Jihad Campbell last week. I really like that pick. I think, again, people see the linebacker tag and get scared off. He's a versatile player, can play both off ball and on the edge. Like, this is just building the trenches up here. First 6 picks all on the defensive or offensive line. So this was actually very segmented here. You get 6 guys in the trenches, then 3 safety guys, 3 secondary guys right after that. And then you round out with a couple of skill position players on the offensive side of the ball. So I think that, again, Campbell, Walker, Stewart, really great top 3 if you want to build out those trenches a little bit more. I think Jackson Slater is one of my favorite mid-round offensive lineman prospects in this class. So good mock draft here from Be More Finest. Next, let's get into one from Two Toneville, who says double dip at defensive line and cornerback. Would love to see Trey White come back for depth. Also, Fadil Diggs would be a great addition to the edge room. He could learn a great deal from Kyle Van Noy, plus with the speed and versatility, it's a win. So Derrick Harmon, Oregon defensive lineman at 27. Omar Norman Lott, Tennessee defensive lineman at 59. Wyatt Malum, the West Virginia tackle at 91. Noah Williams, California corner at 129. Zay Alexander, corner from LSU at 136. Dante Thornton Jr., Tennessee wide receiver at 176. Tyler Cooper, Minnesota guard at 183. Fadil Williams, Syracuse edge at 203. Teddy Buchanan, California linebacker at 210. Malachi Moore, safety from Alabama at 212. And Holland Pierce, Rutgers tackle at 243. Harmon Lott would be disruptive on the defensive line back-to-back. I know Harmon's getting a lot of buzz, as we talked about with Omar Norman Lott as well. So trenches with also an offensive line guy in the 3rd round. And then you go with Noel Williams, who actually, to me, if you can get him in the 4th round, I would love that pick for Baltimore. I think for me, if the Ravens don't address corner back-to-back in the 4th makes sense. If they do, if they add a vet before the draft, like you say here, Trey White, I would probably replace Zay Alexander with you have so many picks. I don't even know who you replace, because you have Dante Thornton, who I talked about last week, and I think he can be a really solid speed threat for Baltimore. So I don't know if cornerback to back would be it here. I mean, maybe an edge guy. And again, there's versatility with some of the defensive linemen being able to kick out to edge, but I'd probably replace a second corner with a mid-round edge prospect there. But I do like this draft. I think the prospects taken are really good. And if they came out of this draft with these players, you get, again, needs-based picks on day 3, which you're going to have to do to fill out the rest of your roster. I like this mock draft a lot here from Two Toneville. That's all I have for you here today, though, on Locked On Ravens. Really appreciate everybody for tuning in, watching, listening to the show. We're here for you 5 days a week with daily Ravens coverage. So coming up tomorrow, we'll be right back here with more Ravens content. Be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form on the way out. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.